Pilot James goes to a distant planet that is suitable for life in all respects, but the landing turns out to be an emergency. Once on the surface, the man decides to try to find salvation from the locals, but it turns out that the human species has been replaced by completely different creatures. Now very unfriendly mechanical creatures roam the planet, whose goal is the destruction of humanity. The future of humanity. 2 ships are being built in Earth's orbit, dubbed Machine 1 and Machine 2, which are aimed at searching for intelligent life on nearby planets. The fully autonomous Machine 2 is flying to the chosen planet, but communication with it can be established only when it is in orbit. And now this day is coming. The unnamed probe successfully checks and collects the necessary data, and now a person must land on the planet to make a geodetic survey. Pilot James flies along the route, believing that there is nothing complicated in his task, because he has already explored other worlds more than once. He is preparing to make a standard flight and the same landing. The AI of his shuttle starts counting down, establishing a connection with the Machine 2 that flew to the planet, and soon joins the main station. Preparations for landing on the planet begin. The pilot enters the lander, after which there is a descent from orbit. When landing, speeding happens, and then, for a reason unknown to the captain, the landing turns out to be an emergency. The pilot takes a long time to recover, lying on the hard grass. When he finally realizes what has happened, he looks around the inhospitable plain and soon finds the burning remains of his lander. He understands that he was left without the means to return to work, which means to get home. The cosmonaut has been trying for a long time to postpone the moment when he will have to take off the helmet of the spacesuit, although by all indications the atmosphere on the planet is suitable for breathing. Soon he still has to take a chance and breathe in someone else's air. The captain makes sure that the air is breathable and sends a report to the base confirming their expectations. At first glance, the planet is empty, although it is habitable. Now he will be waiting for a message from Earth about the expedition sent to his rescue. James searches the area, hoping to find the surviving supplies, but finds only an empty thermos, which causes annoyance and irritation of the man. But, fortunately for him, he still finds an emergency bag with a small amount of food. Night falls, but the captain cannot sleep on the bare plain. In the morning, without waiting for a response from the base, he sets off, hoping to find some shelter, and most importantly, water. Soon he goes out to a stormy river and analyzes the liquid, which turns out to be drinkable, which already gives some hope. A person does not rest for long on the shore and goes on. Soon he discovers a moving object in the distance, which he tries in vain to examine with binoculars, but he can't figure out what it is or who it is. Hoping to find support, he waves his hands and gets a shot in response. The captain rushes to run, hoping to hide from an unknown enemy, but 2 iron figures are right behind him. In the end, he takes refuge in the rocks, and the robots, not finding a person, leave. Soon James finds an old road and sets off along it, because it must inevitably lead to human habitation. But then some flying machines are passing over him. The man runs to the side and retreating, rolls down the stone embankment. He finds himself at the base of a huge tower, clearly erected by intelligent beings. Then he climbs inside and, finding a protected nook, falls asleep from fatigue. Waking up, the pilot looks around and comes to the disappointing conclusion that no one is going to save him. Despite this, he sends another countdown about the presence of robot machines on the planet, which indicates intelligent life. Only this gives him hope of returning home. Exhausted from the heat, James walks further along the old road, periodically resting on the side of the road and eating small stocks of food. During one such stop, he falls asleep and wakes up in alarm from unfamiliar sounds. Crouching down, the man watches the robot that appeared nearby, which is accompanied by a mechanical dog. After waiting for the couple to move away, James runs to the woods. He wanders for a long time between the trees, periodically resting, but this strange couple still finds him. The pilot rushes to run and, slipping, falls, injuring his arm. Out of fear and helplessness, the man gets angry and, grabbing a stick, rushes into the attack. He hits the robot, breaking its front plate, and it begins to spin helplessly on the spot, unable to find a person. James runs on, despite his wounded arm. After making sure that there is no pursuit, the pilot bandages the bleeding hand and loses consciousness. The captain wakes up from the fact that someone is nearby, and opening his eyes, he sees a robot dog next to him. James grabs the stick again, but the mechanical creature behaves calmly and is not going to attack. The pilot sees a bag of food and, picking it up, goes to the side where, in the process of fighting with the robot, he lost his bag. The robot dog obediently accompanies the man and James finds himself a new iron friend. Soon, on the side of the road, James finds a bottle covered with inscriptions. He begins to send a report on the find, and the dog stands quietly nearby. Then a man sees a small stone house with a ruined roof nearby and runs to it, hoping to find at least someone alive. He is disappointed. The house has been empty and ruined for a long time. Nevertheless, the pilot goes inside the building, and, oddly enough, there is electricity in it. James inspects the surroundings, which looks as if the house was recently abandoned. The man finds a weapon and a video projector on the table. Turning it on, he sees footage of the family chronicle. Kids play in the garden and blow soap bubbles. Adults barbecue and drink wine, talking about the threat of war, in which no one believes. Everything is like on planet Earth. In the box, James sees newspaper clippings full of photographs of explosions, and the political situation is escalating. And then helicopters fly over the people from the newsreel, and a nuclear explosion occurs nearby. The projector stops, and tears appear in the pilot's eyes. Later, he looks through the found clippings again and finds a plan of an underground command post, which is located somewhere nearby. He spends the night in the house, dreaming of his child, and in the morning again finds a robot dog at the door, which has remained next to the person. James tests the found gun and it turns out that it is perfectly serviceable. The man collects what can help him survive, and leaves the house accompanied by a dog. Then it dawns on him that this is not just a parody of an animal, but a mechanism created to carry something. He puts the bag on the robot's back, and the dog, releasing special grips from the trunk, obediently carries the received burden along the route familiar to her. Deciding that she is going to her house, James rushes after her and soon comes to the destroyed buildings. He sends another report to the base that, apparently, the surface of the planet has suffered from a terrible war. In his opinion, the machines follow the instructions of the creators, who are apparently hiding underground. The man hopes to establish contact with them. At the moment, he is at a small bridge and is going to use the technology of local residents to return home. Meanwhile, the dog, having reached a certain point, stops. Taking the opportunity, the man arranges a snack, and then puts the bag on the robot and follows him. Soon she leads him to the ruined buildings of a small settlement and stops again. James understands that this was the purpose of their trip, but does not see anything remarkable in the area. Here a smoke bomb falls out of the dog's side. James, with surprise, watches the appearance of the veil when a bullet explodes nearby. A drone appears overhead, which purposefully fires at this particular area. A man is hiding in a destroyed house, calling the dog, but she is not going to move anywhere and is calmly standing under fire. Realizing that she is not responding to his screams, the pilot runs to her and grabs the bag. Only after that the dog follows him into the house, where they try to hide from the drone. Soon, ground robots appear and start shelling the territory. James has to hide behind the surviving walls. At this time, the robots engage in a fight with each other, which surprises the pilot. Taking advantage of the situation, the man runs away from home when one of the flying cars hits the other. The pilot escapes from a dangerous settlement and moves on. Soon he finds a huge combat cannon in the middle of the field, which opens fire when he sees a drone flying up to the place. While the gun is distracted by the enemy, James goes down the stairs to the basement. There he becomes ill due to exposure to chemicals. After catching his breath and regaining consciousness, he returns to the bag, takes out a mask and a gun, and returns to the basement again. The cosmonaut penetrates deep corridors where there is still electricity, and walks along them for a long time, trying to find the real owners. Suddenly he hears someone's mechanical footsteps and meets a robot, which he tries to stop with a bullet. This naturally fails, and James runs through the corridors from the car chasing him. But it turns out that the robot goes to its goal, and soon disappears behind an open door, under which a human body lies. At this time, James receives a response from the base, where he is informed of communication problems and promises to send help immediately. The pilot goes further and finds the control center, in which a mechanical voice sounds, informing about the presence of chemical weapons. On the CCTV screens, the men see numerous remains scattered throughout the complex, and becomes enraged. How could people do such a thing? Here the base calls the cosmonaut again and informs him that help is not far away. James sees clippings on the board where the people of the planet blame aliens for everything, from which panic reigns in their world, which is only fueled by ridiculous decisions of governments. A completely demoralized pilot comes to the surface and sees rocket explosions flare up over the planet. In desperation, he puts a gun to his head, but then drops the weapon. There is no turning back anymore. Thanks for your attention.